Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dave White, and I serve as Associate Vice President of Research Advancement in ASU's Knowledge Enterprise and Director of the Global Institute of Sustainability and Innovation in the Julianne Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory. And we are delighted to welcome you today to this kickoff event of the Water Innovation Initiative. We see this as kind of a party, right? We're celebrating, so let's all just... So we're really excited. As you will learn today, the Arizona Water Innovation Initiative is a statewide effort, supported by investments from the state of Arizona and the Virginia G. Piper Charitable Trust. This initiative is led by ASU's Global Futures Laboratory in collaboration with the Ira A. Fulton Schools of Engineering, together with industrial, municipal, agricultural, tribal, and international partners. It's appropriate today that we gather at the Walton Center for Planetary Health, a building designed to bridge our ancient past to our thriving future. The courtyard features a modern canal operated by the Salt River Project. It's important to note that this canal and many others have deeper roots, and some date back before Europeans settled the valley, built by the ancestors of the modern Acamel Odom, which are today part of the Gila River and Salt River Pima Maricopa Indian communities. We acknowledge that Arizona State University's 4 campuses are located in the Salt River Valley on ancestral territories of indigenous peoples, including the Acamel Odom, Pima, and Pipash Maricopa peoples, whose care and keeping of these lands allow us to be here today. Today, we will hear from university leadership and a diverse panel of key partners who are together with a shared purpose, driving a thriving water future through discovery, innovation, and action for the benefit of all Arizona. Today, we are inviting you all to become a part of this initiative. First, we will hear a brief recorded message from Peter Schlosser, Vice President and Vice Provost of Global Futures.
Welcome to the launch of the Arizona Water Innovation Initiative. How do we make best decisions to ensure a future that still has water? This question is central to the new Arizona Water Innovation Initiative, which we are here to celebrate today. The American Southwest is under increased pressure due to the use of environmental resources as well as climate change. And besides the rising temperatures, which everybody talks about, the dwindling water resources are one of the biggest challenges for a future of growth and human well-being in Arizona. Whereas climate change affects virtually all regions of our planet, there are hotspots of such change, and Arizona is located in a region that is more affected by climate change than others. We know from model projections since about 2 decades that the southwest of the United States is getting hotter and drier, and the past 2 decades have been the driest over the past 1,200 years. Such model projections are confirmed by observations. For example, in 2021, the water levels in Lake Mead and Lake Powell were the lowest since recording began. Now we have to be careful that we are not confusing climate change and weather. Yes, it has been a wet winter, which is weather, and the short-term drought conditions have improved. But it will take years of wet winters to erase decades of drier than normal conditions. We are continuing to see reduced availability of water from the Colorado River. By the way, the most endangered river in the US. Decreased precipitation, greater evaporation, and increased water usage due to population growth, heat, and inefficient agricultural practices. If we look towards the future, these difficulties are only projected to get worse. The Arizona Water Innovation Initiative, a statewide project led by the Julianne Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory in close collaboration with the Ira A. Fulton Schools of Engineering, is designed to address Arizona's water challenges and to find options for a sustainable water supply for Arizona now and in the future. This initiative is academia's opportunity and obligation to connect the great depth of research and knowledge that we hold and render it in terms that can support decision makers. To this end, the Arizona Water Innovation Initiative will translate existing knowledge about the natural and engineered water systems, including availability, use, reuse, treatment, and their changing patterns, into information ready to be used by those who have to make the difficult decisions concerning a secure water supply for Arizona. We frequently talk about the fact that we are living in the decisive decade, where the decisions we make today will impact the way in which future generations can live and thrive for hundreds, maybe thousands of years to come. This is our moment to put the best science and scholarship behind decisions to ensure a future where we still have water.
So Peter was not able to be here today as he was called to New York City, where he serves on the leadership board for the American Geophysical Union, but he sends his regards. Next, I'm pleased to welcome to the podium Dr. Sally Morton. Sally is the Executive Vice President of Arizona State University's Knowledge Enterprise, which is responsible for the university's economic development and research ecosystem. Sally, welcome.
Good afternoon. I'm really delighted to be here with you and celebrate with you today. The Arizona Water Innovation Initiative exemplifies Arizona State's commitment to use-inspired research of public value. Knowledge Enterprise, the unit that I lead, is delighted to support the initiative. Knowledge Enterprise drives research, discovery, and innovation at ASU, and we are dedicated to changing the way the world solves problems. We are guided by the ASU Charter, which calls out our commitment to research and discovery of public value accountable to the communities that we serve. The Arizona Water Innovation Initiative, I note in particular the word innovation. Innovation is a hallmark of ASU. It's in the fabric of this institution. 8 years in a row, we've been voted the most innovative university. And we are here in a physical manifestation of that innovation, the Walton Center for Planetary Health, which houses the Julianne Wrigley Global Futures Laboratory, the first medical center for the world. Water is key to the Earth's health and to our health as well. This physical place is a magnet for all across the university, our community, and our diverse set of partners to come together and design together a sustainable future in which all life can thrive. The Arizona Water Innovation Initiative is a key part of that combined response to complex and urgent challenges of which we are all accountable to solve. In the Arizona Water Innovation Initiative, we will work to stimulate technological developments, partnerships, and applied research. We will promote entrepreneurship, technology transfer, intellectual property, spin-off companies, and a sustainable economic development to support high-value job creation by recruiting and retaining leading industries. This work will also take into consideration the complex governance and policy issues which surround water. The cross-disciplinary nature of the initiative demonstrates that transdisciplinary problem-solving is essential. We recognize the interconnectedness of the environmental, social, economic, and policy issues surrounding Arizona's water challenges. ASU has a rich history of water research, and we intend to build on our capabilities as a state convener and technical lead alongside our partners, taking advantage of our rich history of collaboration. Our communities and future generations need us to succeed together. Arizona has entrusted this initiative to all of us to provide evidence-based and actionable solutions that can be scaled and exported beyond this region. The state has invested in all of us. This is a critical moment. ASU is committed to succeeding with you to strengthen water resilience via a robust research, innovation, and economic development ecosystem. And I am honored to join you as we begin this meaningful and impactful work together. I'm now honored to introduce the 16th president of Arizona State University, Dr. Michael Crow.
So how many of you are from the ASU community? Most of you. How many are not? The others. So here's a weird thing about universities. So we're a tormented institutional type. And we're tormented because we have always gathered really creative, very verbal, very intellectually oriented individuals into gatherings that we call universities, certainly in the same form that we're in right now for at least the last 1,000 years. And along their way, there has been this torment between, should we do practical things? Should we not do practical things? Should we do science inside the university? Should we do it outside the university? So that debate came down to a rough and tumble existence in England with Cardinal John Henry Newman between in the 1830s, 40s, 50s, and 60s, when he rose to intellectual, philosophical, and theological prominence in British history. He also thought that science really wasn't something that you should be doing in the normal core of the university, and that became unbelievably important and, in a sense, a reason why every time a university is asked to do something practical, like innovate around water, there's always this kind of shuffling of the feet, and there's this looking around, and should we really be doing this? And then there's all the people who are really, really smart but clueless on how to solve an actual problem, and there's this tension and this dynamic going back and forth, all the time, and it's in the root of the institution, except in the United States, where we've made some significant departures. So the Civil War, which was several states leaving the Union because they didn't like the outcome of the political election, they leave the Union. A war starts, a civil war of unbelievable importance, and President Lincoln, a not formally educated, highly intellectual person capable of conceptualizing everything that he could possibly conceptualize, including what he didn't know, he said, I need some scientists. So in the 1860s, he forms the National Academy of Sciences and the National Research Council, and he brings together scientists from wherever they are at the fringes of the universities, and he says, help us. Help us. Help us to win this war. Help us to defeat the enemies of this republic. Help us to bring the nation back together. And the scientists stepped up, and that same institution, formed by Congress, asked for by the president, still exists today, all these decades later. And in the same war, the president realized that we did not have the kind of food security that we needed. We didn't have the kinds of colleges that we needed. We didn't have the universities that we needed. So in the middle of the early stage of the war, when the Union is losing militarily, in the summer of 1862, the president, led by a particular congressman from Vermont named Justin Morrill, he says, I need a new kind of college. I need a new kind of university. I need a new kind of way to think about the practicalities of educating the sons and daughters of farmers and mechanics, of working on engineering problems and solving agricultural problems and solving agricultural things. Can you imagine Newman back in England? And I know what he said. Oh my God, the world's coming to an end. The Americans have gone crazy. They're building agricultural colleges. Well, of course we did. They became the land-grant colleges. They became the University of Illinois. They became Purdue. They became Iowa State. They became Cornell. They became UC Berkeley. Unbelievable institutions emerged when the people of the United States asked for a solution. It's the summer of 1940. President Roosevelt obviously knows by that moment that we are going to be in the war, that we're going to need every tool imaginable to win this war. He doesn't know all of the aspects of it, and he's alerted by some academic scientists that other scientists in Europe, German scientists, may have split the atom. And if they've split the atom, they can build a weapon. And if they can build a weapon of mass destruction, democracy can be defeated. So what does he do? He calls in a guy named Vannevar Bush, who at the time was the president of the Carnegie Institution of Washington. He had been the vice president for research at MIT, and before that he was the founder of one of the founders of the Raytheon Corporation. And he asked Vannevar Bush to figure out how to plug into the universities. How could he plug into all of these brainiacs that lived in the universities so that we might have some chance for democracy to win? You know the outcome of that. Unbelievable intellectual progress in the United States, a transformation of our entire society. And each time, the food issue, the research issue, and the discovery issue relative to the Civil War, the development of what became the Manhattan Project and the Office of Scientific Research and Development, all of those things were the products of academics stepping up, setting aside the normal way of doing things and stepping up to take on a challenge, stepping up to take on something really, really important. It turns out this water is really, really important. It's a lot, it's 80 years later after these things got going. We're a little bit crotchety. We've become self-satisfied in academia. We've become focused on, it's all about getting tenure. It's all about doing this. It's all about doing that. Well, it's partially about all those things. But Cardinal Newman's ideas didn't prevail. They certainly haven't prevailed at Arizona State University, where use-inspired scholarship is one of our 9 design aspirations. We're taking on challenges and helping people to move forward with doing new kinds of things is a part of why we're here. So when the people of Arizona, through the limited resources that they have, and the people of the United States, through the limited resources that they have, they turn to us and they say, what do you got? What do you have? You talk big over there at the university. You talk really big. Well, what do you got? Is there another way to run this? Is there another way to conceptualize this? Are there other legal models, technical models, economic models, practical models, solution models, scientific conceptualizations, new ways to think about things? I mean, we operate water and water systems as if we don't even know what a molecule is. We don't even know the differences in scale. And so the one message I wanted to get out to you is a short one. From time to time, the people ask for help. They expect us to continue to do our normal job, creating a teaching, learning, and discovery environment accessible to anyone from any family background so that they can move forward with their lives and our society can be successful, our democracy can be successful, and what we call the United States can be successful. And every once in a while, a hand goes up and says, you got a bigger problem here. The hand is up. The hand is up. A few shekels have come our way to help to stimulate the notion of an innovation center related to water. Not a study it until you fill all the textbooks with papers that someone might read 15 years from now project. What do you got? What do you have? What can you stimulate? What can you bring together? What can you make happen? What don't we have that we need? There was nothing that existed at the moment that the Office of Scientific Research and Development was initiated by President Roosevelt with the implementation of Dr. Bush, nothing that existed at that moment that didn't exist a short time later because they thought about things in a different way. They advanced and innovated in a different way. And that was like crazy physics professors from Berkeley. You're supposed to laugh at that. And so all I can say to everybody in the room is, how can we generate ideas, innovative systems, innovative tools, innovative decision assets, innovative community engagement assets, innovative resilience conceptualizations, partnerships, linkages, ways to make better decisions, ways to educate the public, all those things. Nothing is left off the table. Innovation is a really, really, really broadly conceptualized thing. So what I wanted to do today is just basically say, we've been asked. We've been asked. 49 years ago, I was a sophomore in college when a small project was funded by the Iowa State Legislature right at the beginning of what was called the energy crisis at the time. And so they decided that in Iowa there was this stuff laying under the pristine cornfields and soybean fields called coal. And if you couldn't use the oil from the Middle East, maybe you could dig the coal up in southern Iowa. And if you could clean it, maybe you could produce electricity and restore the land to a level of agricultural productivity greater than it was prior to the mining effort itself. Now, who could have ever thought of such a thing? They basically said, can you come up with a way to mine coal, clean the coal, use the coal, and restore the land to a higher level of agricultural productivity than it was before? What a crazy project. They invested, the Iowa legislature, millions of dollars in this project 49 years ago. A bunch of kids, including me, students, got put onto this project. We started working on this project, and it became this most unbelievable thing. Whether it was the right project or not, we came up with all kinds of innovations, all kinds of solutions, and we actually devised a way in which you could mine and restore land to productivity greater than it was before, something that had never occurred. No one had ever thought about that before. To use a natural resource extraction mechanism to actually restore land to higher levels of productivity than it had before. A bunch of geology professors, agronomy professors, agriculture engineering professors, chemistry professors, all coming together in ways that they'd never come together before, ever. So we also need to come together here. There are no superheroes in the crowd. There's nobody in their back pocket, even Chris Boone here, that has in his back pocket the water solution for Arizona, right, Chris? Yes. And so the other thing is, one, they've asked us. Two, we have to come together. Three, this is not an academic exercise. Four, we've got to find ways to stimulate innovation. And five, now or never, we've got to get this underway. So, yeah, thank you for being here. Thank you.
Thank you, President Crow, for those motivating words. We appreciate your support of this effort, and we recognize the importance of this initiative to the state and to the people of the state. As we welcome our panelists to the floor, as well as our moderator, I'd like to introduce Sarah Porter. Sarah is the inaugural director of the Kyle Center for Water Policy at the Morrison Institute. She is also professor of practice in ASU's College of Global Futures and an alumna of the Sandra Day O'Connor College of Law. Sarah will introduce you to our panelists. Please note we will not be taking questions directly from the audience as part of the panel discussion today, but we do welcome continued discussion during the reception following the event. At the conclusion of the panel, we will offer some reflections and a call to action. Sarah.
Thank you. It's thrilling to be here, and what inspirational words for us to follow. We have a hard act to follow here. So I am so delighted to be sitting with these folks. They are kind of people that you might see on a typical water panel, and they're kind of people that you wouldn't see on a typical water panel in Arizona. And that's because our discussion today is not going to be the typical discussion of a water panel in Arizona. So let me briefly introduce who we have here. I'm very happy to have Steph Smallhouse, the president of the Arizona Farm Bureau. And we have Todd Brady, who's the Vice President of Global Public Affairs and Chief Sustainability Officer for Intel. We also have Krista McJunkin, who is the Director of Water Strategy for SRP. Just imagine being the Director of Water Strategy. And we have Patrick Dent, who's kind of Krista's counterpart, but his title isn't quite so exciting. It's Assistant General Manager, the Assistant General Manager of Central Arizona Project. And we have Chris Camacho, the CEO of the Greater Phoenix Economic Council. And so what we're going to talk about today during this panel is the perception of these folks who represent a kind of a diverse set of expertise on how ASU can work with them and work with the larger community, work with the sectors that they represent to do just what President Crow said we need to do. We need to work together with other Arizonans to find solutions for the water challenges that our state is currently facing. So I thought I would start out by touching on some collaborations that have already occurred or are underway. And let me start with Patrick, because there's some really interesting work that ASU researchers are doing with Central Arizona Project.
Of course. Thank you, Sarah. I appreciate that. So grateful to be here today and to be part of this kickoff event. At the Central Arizona Project, certainly are focused on diverting Colorado River water into central and southern Arizona. And I was so excited today to know I could come participate on a panel that wouldn't be Colorado River focused, but it was in your video.
Sorry.
And it may come up again. So
I can't make any promises.
We certainly have been engaged with ASU as we've worked on certainly drought and climate change in the Colorado River Basin. And so I wanted to touch on just a couple of those. Dr. Enrique Vivone has partnered with CAP and other water users in the basin to look at the effect of climate on runoff efficiency in the Colorado River. Certainly one of the things that we've observed in the 20-year drought is we have had years of regular to normal snowpack in the basin, but have seen less runoff efficiency. And certainly this project has helped us to understand the mechanisms of that and inform our thinking about how we can better understand what will result in stream flow and an available water supply in the Colorado River. ASU has been there as a partner with us. We've worked with other partners that we commonly work with in the Colorado River Basin. There are many states that are interested in that information, and so that kind of unique collaboration that have brought both the researcher along with the practitioners of those who are delivering Colorado River water together has been a helpful way for us to both understand our water supply, but also work in the policy and legal space as we seek to find solutions on the Colorado River. I would say additionally, we've also partnered with the university in a very practical way. In an operations and maintenance perspective, we operate the Central Arizona Project, which is a canal that brings water, as I said, into central and southern Arizona. And as I understand, I was informed by my biologist as I was doing research this morning that here at ASU, you are growing CAP-specific algae in a laboratory where we can learn, study, and defend ourselves from it. And so that direct collaboration on a specific O&M issue has been a place that's been immediately beneficial for us at the Central Arizona Project.
Wonderful. And that research that you mentioned first with Enrique Vivoni's team, that's funded by NASA, isn't it? At least in part.
Yes, it is. Thank you for reminding me.
Here we have the NASA, our space science agency, funding research on water and really riparian flows, or how water's moving over land, so that a city and agriculture and tribes and other water users, industries can benefit from space science. Is that about right?
Yeah, so I can add to that. Certainly that's helped us to inform our understanding of not only what is happening on a very landscape scale within the Colorado River Basin. That information has helped not only our scientific and modeling approaches, but we've had conversations with our board and our public policy on the kinds of things we've been learning through this research to help us better understand why we're seeing reductions in stream flow in the Colorado River Basin. And then maybe lastly, I believe we've hired someone from Dr. Vivoni's team to continue that work at Central Arizona Project. And so not only have we benefited from the direct science, the conversation, but also from people who have learned and moved into our industry to support our organization.
Thank you. Krista, how about SRP? Any collaborations with ASU spring to mind?
Yeah, we have a number of them. A couple that I want to highlight really focus on our work to protect and manage our watershed. So SRP manages a 13,000 square mile watershed for the Verde and Salt Rivers. And two of the most important areas of our work with ASU revolve around forest restoration and understanding how the watershed operates and will respond to climate change. So on the forest restoration side, again, we're going to mention Dr. Vivoni a bit here, worked with him to understand the water impacts from forest restoration so that we can have a model to model the impacts of forest restoration in order to quantify the water impacts. And that's been an important tool for us as we seek partnerships to do this important work. We have a large task ahead of us to properly restore the watershed and do forest restoration to make it a healthy watershed, both for forest mechanisms, but also for water production. And it takes partnerships. It's going to take a lot of money. And so we've been very successful in finding those partnerships, in part because we've been able to demonstrate through that water modeling the benefit that we can achieve through forest restoration. The second area that we've done extensive work, primarily with Dr. Murphy, is in understanding the climate effects that will show up on our watershed and how it'll impact the water supplies available to our customers. And what we have found through this important research is that unlike when you just downscale a global model, the impacts to our watershed are unique. And that was only something we were able to determine through this specialized research. And so what we've been able to determine is that the outlook is not as dire as you might expect in a hotter, drier future. So we have a better picture of what the future will hold for us. And that's informed many of our planning decisions. So as we look to expand storage on the Verde side of our system by expanding the size of the Bartlett Reservoir, the expanded space, and in addition to restoring space that we've lost at Horseshoe, that expanded space will actually be able to store water for use outside of SRP's boundaries. That was a decision we were only able to come to because we were informed by this climate research that our future, a hotter, drier future, will not have as dire of consequences to the water production of our watershed. So it was a surprising result that actually informed an operational decision for SRP's future and the future of our partners.
And that's a very significant decision, whether or not to enlarge a reservoir.
Absolutely, and not only whether or not to do it, but also what to do with the additional storage.
Yeah. Great. Todd, how about Intel? Any ASU collaborations that you'd like to mention?
So many. In fact, I would start with, at the end of the day, it's all about the people. And we pulled some data just the other day, and I think we've hired over 2,000 new college graduates from ASU over the past 5 years alone. Wow. And when we look at across the U.S., ASU is one of our largest, if not the largest institution from which we're pulling engineers today. When you look at who are we hiring, it's a who's who of all the various engineering fields here at ASU, but then also, finance, marketing, business, supply chain.
Sustainability.
And so we're just really fortunate to be here in the Phoenix metropolitan area and have those ties to ASU. And then we also pulled, looking back over the past, I think we could only go back, we've been now in Arizona over 40 years. And I think we had records maybe going back 20 years or so, literally hundreds of different research projects that we've done in conjunction with ASU. And they range from, IT systems related projects to we do our, what we call packaging, the package around the chip, the microprocessor that's at your computer. All of the R&D for that is done here in Arizona. And a number of different projects that we're working with ASU in that space. And then the mention of algae, actually, I was mentioning to Sarah, right before the meeting, I remember just, it's been, I won't say how long because I'll say 2 or 3 years and ends up being 5 or 6 or 7. But we did a very innovative project with ASU where for carbon capture, we had a small algae unit up on top of our roof at our fab, a semiconductor fabrication plant, where we were capturing the emissions coming off of our fab to see if it would grow algae, and then if that algae could be used in a variety of different applications. So I think that for us, the benefit of working with a university such as ASU is just bringing expertise that we don't have, but also challenging us to think differently and approach topics differently. As we're kind of heads down engineers focused on what we need to do this year and next year, but getting us to look more holistically at some of the problems. That's been a real value in partnering with ASU.
Great. Chris, tell us if there isn't a collaboration that springs to mind, maybe there is with you, what is your view of potential collaborations? You can take both questions at once.
Sure, Sarah. So, can you hear me?
Yes.
There we go. I'm still stuck on British history that Michael was talking about. Reflecting on that, I would say there's so much interconnectedness between Greater Phoenix Economic Council and what I do every day, working to build this robust innovation-centered economy with ASU, whether that's the innovation zones. We're out marketing and showcasing the different real estate opportunities that exist. I've worked for years with Grace and Kyle Engineering School to ensure that companies like Intel and many others have direct throughput of the labor needs that companies need. And in working with Sally and Michael in so many different ways on the applied research front. But what I think is important about this conversation today, I'm someone who's done site selection or supported the site selection process for companies like Intel, which has made a $20 billion investment here recently, and also other major semiconductor companies around the globe deciding to come here. But in addition to that, advanced electronics and other more sophisticated companies that 20 years ago were not looking at Arizona or Greater Phoenix at any level compared to what we're seeing today. Now, what happens with that comes a much more sophisticated delivery system in regards to water availability, water redundancy, the resiliency of the energy grid, air quality, in addition to talent, taxes, the regulatory policy environment. The world has gotten so much more complex in the last 20 years, so this alignment with universities what I'd leave you with on that question, Sarah, is Arizona has a rich history of doing big things when it's needed to. So you think about the time when the Hohokams were here, lining the canals, President Johnson, President Roosevelt, many of the leadership here, I see Senator Kyle, with the 1968 CAP, the 1980 Water Management Plan. All of these important water decisions laid the foundation for really the 7x population growth and the 11x economic growth we've seen since the 1960s. So we're at this additional inflection point for the next 50 years that we're going to have to solve for water in the West. And what an incredible time to be in Arizona, and obviously this group, many people in the room, playing a part in solving this opportunity ahead of us and really laying a foundation for how major markets in the West are going to deal with aridification, which Dave was the one that gave me that word a few months ago that I use a lot now. So I would finish with, Sarah, I utilize a lot of the terminology that my intellectuals provide to me, and I share that with clients evaluating Arizona.
So let me run another term by you, and that's test bed. It sounds like you're saying that the Phoenix area and Arizona can be kind of a test bed for proving new water management or water technology concepts that might be scalable. Is that
Yeah, I won't pretend to be an expert because we have incredible expertise on the panel here, but what I would tell you in terms of water, what I would share though is you think about Arizona's rich history and proving grounds. That's another term for test beds. We tested hot weather vehicles, OEMs for the automotive sector. We've done a tremendous amount of R&D testing for the defense sector for 60 plus years. The transistor was developed here. There's so many things that have happened here. This next wave, again, around, I think, air quality, around water, both conservation and new technologies. There's some people in the room that have technologies around pulling water droplets from the air and utilizing that water for potable water and agricultural uses. And then lastly, the energy grid. To me, this should be our moonshot mindset of being the proving grounds for the West Coast and maybe even the country for testing, validating, and ultimately integrating these novel technologies in addition to the conservation practices we'll put in place. I think it's an and, not an or.
Thank you. So Steph, when I sent out an email asking for the panelists to maybe think about whether there was a collaboration with ASU that they would want to share. You and I had a fun little exchange, which may go back a little bit to ASU's not being the land-grant college that was tasked with supporting agriculture. You want to share a little bit of that?
Sure. I mean, it is true. In the past, we've had a pretty strong relationship with the land grant University of Arizona, the other university, as I always hear, depending upon which room I'm in. But I guess I would answer this question in casting a little wider net in the sense that. It was said earlier today during lunch that there's a reason why this was called by Mr. White, there's a reason why this was called the Arizona Water Innovation Initiative. And so I like to think, since we've really started these water conversations, I'd like to think of this as Team Arizona, right? I mean, we're all impacted by what's happening with the water. And people that are not along the Colorado River are also impacted by what's happening with what's going on with the climate in different parts of the state. And so I would love going forward, first of all, thanks for asking. I guess we were just waiting to be asked at Arizona Farm Bureau. We're happy to be involved, actually very excited to be involved because, like was just said, Arizona has been growing in so many ways. Agriculture has been growing in Arizona while using less water for many, many years. And so we're very proud of that, and we feel equipped to address this issue. It's just not easy, right? It's difficult. So we look forward to being involved in this effort and moving forward, hopefully collaborating on many more things, and maybe being able to bring in some of our friends, from the experimental stations at the University of Arizona to work with ASU on some technology and crop sciences, or the Water Resources Research Council to work with the Kyle Center on some big, hard policy questions. So like I said, I really just think of it as Team Arizona, because not any one of us are going to be able to solve this problem ourselves. So,
thank you. I'd love to hear from you all if you have any specific types of roles or collaborations that you would like to see the Arizona Water Innovation Initiative get involved in. So if you were just, you got to submit a suggestion card right now, what would your card say? And I'll let anyone who wants to, and Krista, why don't you go first?
I think a key aspect of focusing on water innovation will be communication and how we talk to the public at large about water issues. It's a confusing space. If you just rely on media headlines to get a clear picture, it's difficult. And oftentimes there are certain issues that come up that get a lot of media attention but don't really represent truly what's going on. So I think some thought and perhaps a platform that can give the context that's needed for the general public to be able to understand what they read in the newspaper or what they hear about, so that they can not only be informed, but also make smart decisions on how they use water and any conservation programs they want to participate in. But that communication aspect, I think, is very important.
Who else? Patrick, it looked like you were going to jump in there.
I did reach my microphone. Thank you, Sarah. I think it goes along the lines with what Krista was sharing. One of the things that I do think that we've talked about already today is the idea that Arizona has some right now issues that it needs to face, and there are challenges that we need to confront to find solutions to problems that will help shape and define and address our water future. I think science, data, information is an important component of that, and helping not just the public who has a renewed, heightened, accelerated interest in water issues within Arizona, but also those who are dealing directly with those problems. One of the problems that I see that I think information can help with is we are faced with a certain need to change in Arizona, whether that's how we might be using our water or thinking about how it has been used, or dare I even say what we think is ours and what we think is somebody else's. At the same time, we need to come together and collaborate. There are those among us who feel like it's the time to entrench and defend. And I think that's a barrier to us really finding solutions going forward. And I'm hopeful that as working together with an Arizona interest, we can find ways to collaborate and move forward.
So I hear translating and communicating, data gathering, plus convening. What else, Todd?
Yeah, if I could add to the collaboration. So you may go, well, what's Intel doing here? What does this have to do with water? We use a lot of water to make a microchip, and so for many years we've been focused on how do we do that more efficiently, and how can we reduce the amount of water we use? How can we reclaim, reuse that water over and over again? We've invested quite heavily in a wide variety of different recycling mechanisms, reclaim mechanisms, and whatnot. And then a few years ago, we took a step back and said, okay, ultimately, though, what are we trying to accomplish? And what we want to accomplish is what we came to, the conclusion we came to was for every gallon of water that we're extracting from the watershed, can we put that gallon of water back, or even more than a gallon of water back? And ultimately, that's what makes us whole with the community, right? And so as we started to go down that path, there was only so much we could do by ourselves. Because at the end of the day, no matter how much we reclaim and recycle, we ultimately lose water to evaporative losses. And just for the engineers and scientists in here, you can never get to that perfect 1 gallon out, 1 gallon back. And so we started to do projects with partners in the agricultural industry, in the nonprofit industry, to do projects that put water back into local aquifers. And what we found, fascinatingly, was that the amount of money that cost on a per gallon of water saved was a fraction of what it cost us to save that water internally. And so my ask would be, from a policy perspective, how do we set up a mechanism? I come from the environmental field where in air quality you have an airshed. And within that airshed, one can trade emissions. And that drives you towards the most economical way of reducing those emissions. And again, this is pie in the sky, I realize that, but could we come up with a similar approach with water, that we look at the water at the watershed level and then are able to trade or able to debits, credits, whatever it is, mechanisms that drive the capital investment towards those areas where we get the biggest return. So that would kind of be my wish list. To have something like that, I think would be phenomenal for our state.
But I love that the Intel representative is asking for a policy solution. So it's just great. Steph.
Yeah, I'd just like to chime in on that real quick. I think that when I see this initiative, something that really excites me about it is that to date, we've brought two different governors are bringing together commissions and councils and things, and we don't have the time or the broad group of folks or different, like the president was saying earlier today, these really smart people in a room thinking about this from all different angles. When we walk into those rooms, it's all about negotiating what our interest is, right? It's leaving with the least amount of bloodshed by the time that we're out of that room. And that's a hard way to plan a future. And so when I think about this initiative, I hear a lot about technology and innovation. ASU is well known for that. A lot of amazing things coming out of here. But when it comes to my perspective from agriculture, we have a lot of technology out there to help us save water with irrigation. Could we have more? Absolutely. Could we have new and amazing things? Absolutely. But if a farmer doesn't have certainty that he's going to be able to even use the water, he's not very likely to adopt that new technology because it's likely going to be expensive. Just because something is new technology doesn't mean it's going to be less expensive and doesn't mean it's going to save on labor. And those are two things that are very restrictive in agriculture. And so I think where a lot of this work, I would like to see it go within the initiative, is just innovation of thinking. Innovation of thinking, why isn't the farmer able to use this technology? Because like I said, there's a lot of technology out there that may or may not be in use, but there's a reason why. Farmers will use the technology if it makes them more efficient, if they have the potential to do that. But if they have uncertainty in policy of whether they're even going to have access to water, they're less likely to do that. If they have, issues with their soils already, with salinity or, different things like that, they're less likely to do that. If they don't have labor to go out and fix the drip tape every time a gopher digs a hole in it, they're probably not going to use drip tape. And these are, this is kind of bringing the conversation back down to earth instead of, way up at 100,000 feet. But I think that's a conversation that needs to be had, is that we need the innovation, we need the technology, we can always use the next new best thing, but we also need to recognize what's impeding the farmer from using that specific technology that's already available to them today. And so I think that there's a lot of thought leaders within the Kyle Center, you and I were talking about the Decision Theater earlier today, that can basically take this puzzle and take it all apart and then try to put it back together again and say, okay, if we fix this over here, then maybe we can get a positive impact over here. So
that is super thoughtful, interesting for us to start working on, people. Chris, what about you?
Yeah, maybe just a few thoughts. So one, my Intel colleague here mentioned reuse and the use of effluent. I think that's going to be a more common discussion with not all cities, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, are created equal in terms of their water capacity. And so, again, I'm looking at it from a corporate world perspective. Companies, whether it's farming or it's corporate, they're evaluating risk. And when they want to deploy capital, this is going to be a factor. And so one of the things that my job entails is I do a lot of national press work. And if you read the headlines in the last 3 months, we're going to stay away from the Colorado River, right? The headlines are not overtly positive necessarily, and in some cases sensational, in some cases legitimate. But what I find the challenge is in trying to articulate the water history or water facts. That's not an easy thing to distill nor communicate. And so back to the first question, Sarah, you asked, I spent a lot of time with my ASU colleagues trying to just get facts. And even those are hard because of some of the legalities or policies of the past or how it's interpreted or applied. All that being said, I think that's one item within this process is trying to get to fact. I think the second, oftentimes, and this is kind of tied to the first comment, is I often get the question from national press, whether it's the Wall Street Journal or the Times or elsewhere, saying, why does Arizona keep supporting advanced industries that use water? whether it's Intel or TSMC or many others. LG is the most recent one. And I said, well, that's 6 to 7% of our state's utilization is in industry today, industrial uses today. So very small percentage. And then I give the use cases of the net zero commitments that companies like Intel are making about the wetlands investments and other things they're doing to minimize their water usage or reuse within our communities. So that's a commonplace understanding here, but outside Arizona, that is not well known or even appreciated. So that's second. And then third, because you didn't ask, is I do think this idea of, I don't know if it's part of these monies, but I would hope in our work with this new administration that there's an embodiment of interest around incentivizing more so than regulation. I think that's a hard part for Arizonans. We don't like to be regulated into much, as I've learned, and yet can we incentivize behavior, and even whether it's the consumer side or industry side, because when I look at the corporate ESG commitments that global corporations are making today, it's very different than 20 years ago. 20 years ago, it was truly about the P&L, return on cost of capital. Today, their shareholders are expecting so much more. Their employees are expecting so much more in terms of their impact to the environment and to social interests. And so I would hope that this is a totality of view at how do we move Arizona forward. And finally, I think it was very well mentioned on the agricultural side. I often get industry thoughts saying, well, agriculture uses a significant portion of the overall state's utilization. Can't we just continue to lessen the utilization from agriculture? Well, if you look around the geopolitical factions of the world, the last thing we want is to have to rely on another country to import our food. You're seeing that in Ukraine and Russia today. So all that being said, it's important, and I do come from 4 years down in Yuma before I came here, and I can tell you, they talk about how important water is, and you bring up any kind of adversarial views of water in Yuma, you're going to get run out of town. So I learned that very quickly from my Yuma friend. So anyway, those are a couple thoughts I think that I hope would be contributed to this conversation.
Great, thank you. Any other thoughts about potential, what you'd like to see the Water Innovation Initiative do? Go ahead.
So it might be a little boring because it is more engineering instead of
Love it. Bring it on.
But, we still need engineering, and we need it in terms of water quality and water treatment. So you brought up reuse, and as we look at the need for us to put to maybe lower grade water to use, that if you had choices, you wouldn't go after it. That's going to become more commonplace, where whether it's natural constituents or treating effluent,
pharma,
right. All of those constituents, we need innovative ways to treat them that are economical, that are easy to operate, that are scalable, that can be used by large cities and small water providers, and we need some focus on that area.
I think a lot of people were very happy to hear you say that. As we upcycle water to uses, we need engineering to help us out, to upcycle it to the purpose that we need it for.
Yeah, if I could just jump onto that, absolutely. I mean, the more that we recycle, reclaim water, what you run into is the hardness of the water. And Arizona's water is already very hard to begin with. And so how do we have better solutions for those types of things? I think that cuts across a variety of uses, including agriculture. You can't have super hard water for various agricultural applications. So what can we do there? What are some innovative ways that we can treat that hardness and deal with that? I think that is definitely an area.
Well, and on that note as well, we already have growers who are able to make use of recycled water, of effluent, but everybody can kind of use a different scale of filtration, right, of what's in that water. An issue with a lot of the agricultural community, though, is having access, being close to a plant, right? And so then it's like, okay, how much energy are you going to put into getting that water from the plant to an agricultural field, And so that's also a question of looking at maybe planning and where these plants are located and different things like that.
Yeah. So where the plants go, and maybe even water moving, how we can use renewables or other forms of energy to move water. That's another area. That's great. Any other? All right. Well, let me ask you all. Because we have this wonderful opportunity to hear from you this day when we're launching this new initiative. What would you like to see us make our top priorities? We'll start with Chris and then move toward me.
Yeah, that's a good question. Top priority. Well, I'd go back to the risk mindset that companies have today is the concern around the effect of weather, the effect of climate, how that breeds or affects then air quality, and ultimately how that affects your natural resource capabilities. And we're in an era in which the country wants to make things again. We're making semiconductors. We're trying to build an industry out of electric vehicles. It's going to change the composition of where we get rare earths to all kinds of minerals. So it's going to change the climate around mining. So to me, at the end of the day, it's trying to eliminate or alleviate best we can risk for our residents and risk for companies by having resiliency practices in place that combine elements of conservation, which was mentioned, elements of reuse or reuse of reclaimed water, and continuing to harness what I've seen from SRP, who's a big partner, or a significant partner of ours, continuing augmentation practices while we're looking at long-term potential solutions for augmentation. And I think that's, in my mind, how I think about it, is there's some short-term things we can be working on. I hear some pretty wide-ranging long-term solutions that I'm not certain when I talk to the experts if we're fully there yet. But I think we should be thinking about the here and now, because it is a challenge here and now, while we think about the Arizona of 2040. What are some of those things that we should be putting in place while we're testing and validating, hopefully, these new technologies? Because I will tell you, on the venture side, the number of companies I'm talking to today in climate tech, envirotech, I was not talking to at all 10 years ago. There's probably 50 of the most elite companies around the world considering doing something here because of the opportunity that our weather, our climate, our landscape affords, which is a really unique thing we can leverage.
Patrick, what would you like to see us prioritize?
I have a couple of specific thoughts. So I would start with, I think I'm picking up a little bit where Chris left with, which is this idea that I think we are observing and living in change constantly. And as we see in Arizona, and feel some of the stresses of the pull of water from historically very large agricultural use, which clearly continues to have a role within Arizona, to more industrial and urban uses in growing population centers. Thought about how that change occurs and how we manage the water supplies as we see a different Arizona unfold in front of us. The other thing that I think that the Innovation Center has the opportunity to do here at ASU is continue to be an education institution as well. I'll reflect on my own experience as an engineer. I was most comfortable with the other engineers, and still am, frankly. But I think the idea that problems are increasingly complex and variable and require different sets of skills and talents and people to work together on them, both on the problems we have today, but the problems we'll work on tomorrow too. I see the ASU experience engaging with students and participating on these solutions that will be a focus of this Innovation Center to be a good opportunity for those students as they have interest in water and will develop as leaders in Arizona in the decades to come.
Krista?
I'm going to kind of build off what Patrick said. I'm interested in interconnection and how decisions around water have far-reaching impacts. And so I think that ASU is uniquely situated with this wide variety of areas of expertise. If you can bring them together, so for example, something like water conservation, that people take for granted that we should be doing more water conservation. But how you go about it and what you choose to invest in terms of water conservation can have wide-ranging impacts on our lived environment, environmental justice, the urban heat island. There are lots of kind of second and third order impacts from those decisions, and we need to understand them if we're going to make big swings at those kinds of projects. And an institute or initiative like this has the wherewithal to bring those resources together so that you aren't just considering it from an engineering point of view or a water policy point of view, but getting out into the broader viewpoint.
Great. Todd?
Yeah, I'll reiterate, as we go down the line, you start hearing similar things, right? But as an engineer that's gone to the dark side, and that is I don't do as much engineering anymore, I think, and you're hearing that, we need to bring everybody to the table. And you see this just with the panel here. I think in doing so, you get so many better ideas, so many better solutions than if we're all trying to work our one independent piece. So that'd be the one thing. And then the other, Chris mentioned, we just made a $20 billion investment in Arizona. We've been here 40 years. We want to be here another 40 years. And so from a selfish perspective, what I would love to see is, what is our roadmap that 50 years from now, we've got water and we've grown. And so it's almost like a moonshot for the organization and by the way, I'm happy to talk to anyone about all the technical needs we need, because there are many, and we can go through those. But at the same time, we can't lose sight of the big picture, that it's not just about this year and next year, but it's 50 years in the future where we want to be here in Arizona. All of us want to be here and have a sustainable future as it relates to water.
And Steph, top priorities?
So I think probably two things come to mind. The first one would be going back to my earlier comment and sort of what has been already said in terms of certainty. It is hard to plan. It is hard to take action when you're completely uncertain of what your future is. And so I think one of the top priorities should be this mapping of the future. All of these great minds looking at, if we move this, like it's like a Jenga game, right? We move this is what happens. Because that will free up certainty. Frees up your entire future, right? If you know that you have a future, if agriculture knows that it has a future in Arizona, which I'll be honest with you, agriculture does not know that right now. We don't feel like that. We want to have a future in Arizona, but we don't feel like others think that we should have a future here. And if agriculture knows that it has a future in Arizona, then that opens up a whole just huge realm of possibilities of investment and risk and all of these other things. But you have to have certainty first that you have a place in that future. And then the second thing would be augmentation. I would really like to see, some innovation, some just not even, maybe just some basic revisiting some research. The Arizona Water Blueprint, which the Kyle Center has done, we have a bunch of spots on that map that identifies local storage. Well, what are we going to do with those, right? We can't have centralized water management in Arizona, right? We have to decentralize it in a way that we can go to northeastern Arizona, we can go to southeastern Arizona, and we can look at the possibilities for augmentation and think of innovative ways to do that. And on top of that, anticipate. We give up so easily. We that's not going to happen because, there's too much environmental analysis and people are going to get upset and da-da-da-da. Well, I went to the Hoover Dam a couple of weeks ago. Always amazes me. I sure am glad they didn't give up, right? I'm sure I'm glad they thought, are you crazy? We're not going to be able to build this, and we're just talking about localized augmentation. And so I would love to see the initiative really zero in on these areas of the state. Look at where local augmentation can happen, anticipate and mitigate for the legitimate concerns that people have, right? Because we're all stakeholders, we're all in this together. If everybody's not on board, then you get stuck. And so, take the time to develop those relationships and to say, what's your biggest concern here? How can we mitigate for that? Because we have to plan for the future. We have to have, decentralized storage. We have to have more augmentation around the state. And I think about the state land department. The state of Arizona manages all of this land. What are we doing in terms of water planning, looking at what can the state do to invest in its own resources in terms of management of the watersheds, like SRP has been working on really, forever, in terms of the forests. Well, the state land department could be doing the same thing, So how can this initiative pull in the state of Arizona and say, okay, land department, where are some areas where we can improve our water infiltration, especially into these areas that are closed basins that we absolutely have to catch every drop of water for storage. So those would be the two things I would be at the top of my list, would be mapping the future for certainty and augmenting, really getting down into the details and looking for augmentation opportunities.
Some great suggestions from all of you. In our final couple of minutes, I would welcome you to share any words of wisdom or words of advice that you have for us as we embark on this exciting new initiative. And I think I'll just go from Steph across to Chris. Any last words, final thoughts, words of wisdom, advice?
Well, I guess I would just say, obviously, I'm speaking from an agricultural perspective, because I believe that's why I'm up here. I don't want to imagine an Arizona 50 years from now where you look at the graph and, economics, growth is like this, and agricultural production is like this, because eventually a graph like that doesn't work out too well. You can't have growth, you can't have success without having food production, and we happen to do it very well in Arizona. We are not growing food in Arizona in spite of the climate. We're growing food in Arizona because of the climate. And we grow things like alfalfa, we raise dairy cattle, we grow durum wheat, we grow leafy greens very well here. We're very good at it. And that's of importance not only to the state, but to the nation. And so, agriculture did not cause this shortage. And fixing a water shortage should not then cause a food shortage. And we can totally do this. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. We just have to balance those priorities and those investments. So I guess that would be my thoughts.
Thanks.
Yeah, I would agree, and just add to that. I'm very optimistic and excited about this new initiative, because I think as we bring this diverse set of stakeholders together, I think we're going to come up with ideas and solutions that we hadn't thought of before. I come out of an industry, and I've been with Intel almost 30 years now, and every 2 years we have to come up with a new process technology. And our engineers, I wish I could claim to be one of them, right? But our engineers now can put over 1 billion transistors on something the size of your thumbnail that are turning on and off over 1 billion times a second. Think about that. It's just amazing. Well, the same can be done as we pull together these stakeholders and say, we've got this big challenge here with water. How do we collectively work on it? And so I'm really excited that we have someone like ASU to pull all the partners together. And I think as we all roll up our sleeves and jump into it, we're going to make a lot of great progress.
I think I just want to make a plug for finding opportunities to work with ASU for when you have a business problem, a business case. When I first came to SRP, there was this issue that in a lot of our work with the universities, it was not geared that way. It was more, they had a kind of an ivory tower research project they wanted to do, and they wanted to work with us on it to get data or funding, but it wasn't really aimed at our goals, and that has completely changed. And now we have true collaboration where our needs are fulfilled by the project, and plus there's that added benefit of the academic learning as well. And that has just been a huge asset to us being able to work with the universities, but in particular ASU, to serve these business purposes and to have real actionable work come out of it, so that we're not only innovating on paper, but it's applied and it actually impacts the way we do our work.
Wonderful. Patrick?
I think my comment goes to even where you've started today, which is, being engaged in the folks who are practitioners working to solve the problem. That collaboration, I think, is key. I would reflect back to my initial sharing of our partnership with ASU on looking at effects in our watershed in the Colorado River Basin. I think getting a response and working on things that are helping drive toward the solution you need requires communication and coordination across those who are working hard to solve those problems.
Thanks.
That would have been a good one to end on right there. I guess one final additive thought would be, while supporting conservation in practice, I do believe that the money's been placed there by Congress with $800+ billion with the IRA and the IIJA, BIL. Leveraging those monies into this transformative move, I think would be remiss if we didn't do that. And then lastly, I would say on the innovation front again, my hope that we'll look back in 2050 and say, this led to something so extraordinary on the novel innovation side That new intellectual property was created here, scaled here, implemented here. And that would be, in addition to all the other practices of things we know and are certain today, there's so many technologies that we're seeing in their first foray that will change how we go about solving these problems. And my hope is that we become a place that not just imports other places' IP, we've been known for that, but we stimulate our own intellectual property. And that's what I'd hope this would be.
Please join me in thanking this fantastic panel.
So I want to thank Sarah and all of our panelists for that fantastic discussion and also for that mandate, set of priorities for us to all work together on. In the final part of our program, we're going to hear from two inspirational women who are leaders in the space of water, and we're going to hear from one proven leader and one emerging leader. The first is here in person, and that is Sandy Fabritz. Sandy is going to offer a few closing comments and reflections and a call to action. Currently Director of Water Strategies at Freeport-McMoRan, Sandy started out as a college student intern at the Arizona Department of Water Resources and worked her way up, eventually becoming Director of the important agency. More significantly, Sandy is an ASU alumna. She earned a degree in environmental resources and agriculture with an emphasis on range management. Sandy's one of ASU's most impactful and innovative water leaders. And once Sandy finishes, we'll have a final thought from our youth voice. So Sandy, please.
Let's give our panelists another hand, and thank you, ASU, for doing this. This was really amazing. This is a great time to be in water. And I was walking in earlier today, and I walked by Old Main, and I see the kids getting their picture taken up on the steps, and it was like, oh, isn't that cool? And I look at the sign that says 2023, and I stopped. 30 years ago this May, I graduated from ASU, from the School of Engineering and Environmental Resources. Like you said, great program. And it reminds me a lot. It's sort of like the foundation of every single thing we do. The program I was in was ecology, silvicultures, watershed management, range management, livestock management, wildlife management, plant physiology, botany. I mean, it was everything, and riparian management. I mean, everything that we deal with in everything that we do was in this one little program at ASU, this little hidden program that I just stumbled upon, and it changed my entire life. I mean, really changed my life. I wanted to be a range con. I wanted to hide out in the, work for the Forest Service, hide myself in the forest, or tell people how many cows you can put out here. And I end up in this little agency by chance as an intern, and it's just been an amazing experience. Well, I've done water ever since that May of 2023. When I graduated from this great university. So I thank ASU for that, and it's so amazing right now to sit here and talk about this innovation. This is the next step. This is what we've got to do. I think what you're hearing today from all the panelists and from folks are, as water users, as water managers, we're desperate. We're desperate for answers. We're desperate for solutions. And the only way we're going to do that is that we all work together. We're used to working together. We've been working together for a long time. I think you said 2 governors' things. I've done 8 of them. And we're still here talking about the same things. We're desperate. The people who use the water in Arizona are desperate for solutions. And we can do that through this program. We can do this together. And I think today you heard we've got to understand each other better. We've got to understand agriculture. We've got to understand our industry. We've got to understand our municipal water users. We've got to understand mining's role. We talk about reuse, and there's so many great things going on, so many programs going on in this state. We're almost ashamed anymore to say, all the good things that we've done. I love that Krista pointed out, we need to help people understand the messages coming from our media. We need our media to understand the impact of their messages on our economy. I mean, wherever Chris went, those are huge impacts on us. And so doing this, working in, kind of this role, I think back to, when my daughter was young and she would walk out with her one pink sparkle shoe and her one red sparkle shoe. And it would drive my mother, it would drive her father insane. She's got to put the same color on. It's like, choose your battles, know your role. And she was so happy with her pink and red sparkle shoe. It made her happy. Well, we want to deliver water. We need the university's help in doing that. And so this, the call to arms, the call to action is, we've got to do something now. We've got to stop sitting in rooms and talking about it. We've got to stop putting reports together. I mean, those things are so important, and all those things have provided great information that we can all utilize. We don't need to recreate the wheel, right? We need to take action. We've got an administration that's ready to take action. We've got this innovation, utilizing this money. We've got, a federal administration that we're getting money to do things that we've never been able to do. And so let's do it. That's the call to action. Let's do it and stop talking about it. Let's go. This is it. This is the time. So I thank you so much.
Thank you, Sandy. I love that as a final call to action. Let's do it. And so in our final moment, after the video recorded message, we're going to convene in the courtyard for reception. So please join us, if you will. And the final message we're going to hear is from a woman named Teal Leto. Now, you may know Teal better by her online handle, WesternWatergirl. Teal, or WesternWatergirl, has more than 55,000 followers on TikTok, including me on my non-ASU device. And she is a water rights activist and a digital content creator. She's fighting for sustainable development and equitable solutions to the current water crisis in the Colorado River Basin. Teal had hoped to be here today, but she is unfortunately unable to join us in person, but I know she is watching on the live stream. So hi, Teal, and thank you for saying hi to us. And to close on this message of, let's go, let's come together, and let's do it, we are also going to need to bring the youth voices into this movement. It needs to be an inclusive, welcoming, and diverse and equitable effort if this is going to be successful. And so we chose Teal to close out the day.
Hey y'all, most of you guys know me as WesternWatergirl, but my name is Teal, and I live in Durango, Colorado. I run an online platform dedicated to raising awareness to water resource issues here in the southwestern United States. I was supposed to be there in person today, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it. So I guess I'll just deliver my message in my traditional TikTok format. I don't think I need to remind anybody who's there today that water is a really important resource. But I do think it's really important to remember that every single person is a member of a watershed. And whether or not they know it, they rely on that watershed to sustain their entire community. It's our job to raise awareness for that and get them engaged. This is especially important for young people because water is our future. Without water, we have no future. So I really want to challenge every single person who's in the room today to think about how they're engaging with young people and otherwise underrepresented demographics on water resource issues and how you can do a better job. Because as we all know, this is an all hands on deck kind of issue. But I don't need to tell you guys that. Anyways, thank you so much for listening. Thank you for taking your time, and I hope you have a wonderful day.
And so with that, we'll close today's kickoff event. Once again, thank you. This is not only a celebration and a kickoff, but it's an invitation. We're inviting you to be part of this effort, to join us, to be our allies, our advocates, and our partners in this effort. And now we're going to move out to what looks to be kind of a windy courtyard out there. And one final thank you before we go, and that's to our event staff and logistics support. So thank you to all the folks who put on the team. Thank you, everyone. Please join us in the courtyard.